Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll start with the new topic, that is on temporomandibular joint disorder. I'll be covering the topic under the following headings. These are the contents of the topic, that is introduction, functional anatomy, examination of temporomandibular joint, classification of temporomandibular joint disorders, diagnosis and management of these disorders. So the aim and objective of why you should learn this topic is to know the basic anatomy before going to learn about the pathological aspects. So once you know the normal anatomy, it's easy for you to evaluate the pathological aspects of the temporomandibular joint. So to start with the introduction, the TMJ articulation is a joint that is capable of both hinge type and gliding movement. Hinge type movement means it moves in a transverse axis, while gliding movements means it causes rotational movements. So the bony components of this temporomandibular joint are enclosed and they are connected by covered by a fibrous capsule. The mandibular condyle forms the lower part of the bony joint and it's usually elliptical in shape. The TMJ joint can be classified as gignulo-arthroidal joint as it allows both hinging and sliding movements. It's also known as compound joint. So compound joint means any joint which is made up of more than 2 or 3 bones we will consider as a compound joint. So here we have temporal bone, mandibular bone, and the third one is articular disc. So with these 3 components, it's called it as compound joint. And it can also called as synovial joint because it's covered by synovial membrane. So as we see in this diagram, this is the mandibular fossa, this is the articular disc. This articular disc will divide the compartment into upper and lower compartment. And this articular disc is a non-ossified bone which complete the third component of the compound joint. So along with the mandibular bone and temporal bone, the articular disc is the third component of the temporomandibular joint. That's why it's called as a compound joint. So as we see in this diagram, so these are the few landmarks that you should know. This is the mandibular condyle that usually articulates with the mandibular fossa, and this is the external auditory meatus, styloid process, and this is the articular eminence. So whenever the patient opens mouth, the condyle will move in front of the articular eminence, and this is the zygomatic arch, and this is the coronoid process of the mandible. So coming to the functional anatomy of the TMJ. TMJ is the area in which the condyle of the mandible will articulate with the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. Separating these two bones, that is temporal bone and the mandibular condyle, is the articular disc. So these are the components of the TMJ. Bony components, which includes condylar head, glenoid fossa and articular eminence, and the muscles involved in mastication, facial muscles and the muscles of the neck. The soft tissue components includes articular disc, joint capsule, ligaments, muscles attached to the joint. So this is a pictorial diagram showing the mandibular fossa, this is the condylar head, and this is the articular eminence, and this is the zygomatic arch. So this is one more diagram showing the auricular tubercle, petrotympanic fissure, and this is the mandibular fossa, and this is external auditory pore, and this is the tympanomastile fissure. And when you see the mandibular structure, so the most commonly you should know about is the condylar head, which usually articulates with the temporal bone. So coming to the bony components of temporomandibular joint, the first bony component is condylar head. Condylar head is that portion of the mandible that articulates with the cranium around which the movements will occur. The shape of this condylar head is rugby ball type appearance. So this condylar head, it has got two poles, medial pole and the lateral pole. The medial pole is usually more prominent when compared to the lateral pole. So the diameter anterior posteriorly it is 8 to 10 millimeter and medial laterally 15 to 20 millimeter. So this how the condylar head appears when you see anteriorly, and this when you see on the posterior views. The second bony component is glenoid fossa. So the mandibular condyle articulates at the base of the cranium with the squamous portion of the temporal bone. So this glenoid fossa is present just anterior to the exno-auditory canal. So this is the canal, just anterior to the canal, which is oval in shape, is nothing but the glenoid fossa, and this is which touching the condylar head is the articular eminence. Coming to the boundaries of the glenoid fossa, anteriorly it's bounded by articular tubercle, laterally by the zygomatic arch, and posteriorly by the tympanic plate, which is a part of petrous portion of the temporal bone. So next soft tissue component, there is the articular disc. It's a dense fibrous connective tissue which is divided of blood vessels and the nerves. Means it's usually avascular in nature. The sagittal plane of this articular disc is divided into three zones according to the thickness. That is anterior, posterior and the central area or middle zone. The central area is usually thinnest and it is called as intermediated zone, whereas the anterior and posterior zones are usually thick. The articular surface of the condyle usually located on the intermediate zone of the disc, which is bordered by the thicker anterior and posterior region. And the shape of this articular disc is always governed by the morphology of the condyle and the mandibular fossa. So as we see in this picture, so this is the head of the condyle, and this entire portion we call it as articular disc. So this is the anterior band and this is the posterior, and in the middle it is usually thick, and thickness is more in the middle region. And this articular disc will attach posteriorly to the region of loose connective tissue that is highly vascularized and innervated, which is called as retrodiscal tissue. Whereas the articular disc is avascular, but in the posteriorly it has got retrodiscal tissue which is usually highly vascularized and it has got innervation also. The articular disc attached to the capsular ligament not only anterior and posterior but also medial-laterally, which divide the joint into two distinct cavities that we call it as upper joint cavity and lower joint cavity. So this is the diagram showing the movement of the condylar head with respect to the articular disc when the patient is in a closed mouth position and when the patient is in open mouth position. So when it is in the closed mouth position, it will be the condylar head will be resting in the posterior region attachment of the articular disc, whereas when the patient opens the mouth, it moves into the anterior zone or anterior band. The articular disc mainly composed of dense fibrous tissue, which is already told it's avascular. So then come to the ligaments of the temporomandibular joint. They are functional ligament as well as accessory ligament. The functional ligaments includes collateral, capsular, lateral or temporomandibular ligament. Accessory ligaments are stylomandibular and sphenomandibular. And these ligaments, histologically they are made up of collagenous connective tissue, so they do not enter actively into the joint function, but they can act as a passive restraining device to limit and they restrict the border movement. They only stretch, no stretching is there, only elongation of the joint. Coming to the functions of the ligaments, the main functions of the ligaments is stabilization of the TMJ, guidance of movement and limitation of the excessive movement. So these are the functions of the ligaments. So coming to the first ligament, that is collateral or discal ligament. It is a true ligament. The medial discal ligament and lateral discal ligament will divide the joint mediolaterally into superior and inferior joint cavities. The main function of this collateral ligament or discal ligament is to restrict the movement of the disc away from the condyle, and it allows the rotation of the joint and allows the disc to move passively with the condyle as it translates. So next ligament is capsular ligament or joint capsule. So as the name suggests, as you see in this diagram, it lined the condylar head just like a capsule. So the main function of this capsular ligament is to prevent the dislocation of the articular surface and to retain the synovial fluid, and it also has proprioceptive feedback. The last ligament is the temporomandibular or lateral ligament. Also, as you see in this diagram, so this is the temporomandibular ligament. It attaches to the temporal bone and to the posterior border of the mandible. This is the temporal mandibular ligament and this is the capsular ligament. Then the accessory ligament, there are two accessory ligaments, stylomandibular and sphenomandibular. As you see in this diagram, stylomandibular ligament, so as the name suggests, it arises from the styloid ligament and inserts into the mandibular near the angle of the mandible on the medial side, that is on the lingual side. The sphenomandibular ligament, this is the second ligament which arises from the sphenoid bone and inserts into the lingual surface of the ramus of the mandible. So these are the muscles of mastication, that is medial and lateral pterygoid, which I will explaining in the further presentation about the examination of the muscles of mastication. So coming to the blood supply, the temporomandibular joint is mainly supplied by the external carotid artery, which is a branch of common carotid artery, which is further divided into superficial temporal, ascending pharyngeal and internal maxillary. The internal maxillary is the main artery which supplies to the TMJ, which is further divided to deep auricular, anterior tympanic and mid-liminic. The nerve supply mainly supplied by two nerves. One is mesenteric nerve, which is branched from posterior deep temporal nerve, and the second is auriculotemporal nerve. So this is about the functional anatomy. Coming to the examination of the TMJ. So here we have to examine both joint as well as the muscles, that is masticatory apparatus. So with the digital palpation, we can evaluate the temporalis, masseter, sternocleidomastoid, posterior cervical muscles. Whereas the functional manipulation is used for medial and lateral pterygoids. And whenever you are examining the TMJ, you should examine for the pain, any dysfunction, joint sounds and joint restrictions. Now coming to the clinical examination, so before we will go into the disorders, so you should know how to examine the TMJ as well as the muscles of the mastication. So before going to examine the movements of the TMJ, first you evaluate the mouth opening. So first you measure the interincisal opening by using Boles gauge, or you can also use divider and scale also while measuring the interincisal opening. So here first the mouth opening, you should measure from the incisal edge of upper anterior to incisal edge of lower anterior teeth. So the normal mouth opening usually range from 35 to 45 millimeter. So once you will confirm the mouth opening is normal, then you start examining the TMJ. There are mainly two methods of palpation of temporomandibular joint. One method is extraauricular and the other is intraauricular. In extraauricular method, so you can place the index finger of both the hands just in front of the tragus of the ear. So as you see in this diagram, so this is a pretragus area. So you should place your index finger of both the hands on either side. Once you will place your fingers, then you should ask the patient to open and close his mouth. So when you are examining with this method, always stand in front of the patient, check for the mouth opening, any clicking sound is audible, any deviation in the mouth. So these all things you should evaluate in the extraauricular palpation. The second method is intraauricular palpation. So in this method, so as we see in this picture, the examiner's little finger should be placed inside the patient ear canal. Then press it firmly anteriorly. Then ask the patient to open and close the mouth. So with this method, you can evaluate any problem in the disc. The extraauricular palpation mainly will check for the joint sounds or any tenderness, any deviation in the mouth. But in intraauricular palpation, you can also evaluate any change in the disc rearrangements. So once you will inspect and palpate, then you should auscultate in the pretragus region for the any sounds, whether there is any popping sound and grating sounds. So these we should evaluate by using stethoscope in your clinics. So then coming to the examination of muscles of mastication. Hello. So first muscle of mastication you should examine is the masseter muscle. So whenever you are examining for the masseter muscle, first you should instruct the patient to clench the teeth. So once patient clench the teeth, so then you start palpating from the zygomatic area till the lower border of the mandible. Somebody mic is on, please kindly mute it. There is one more method of palpating masseter muscle, that is bimanual palpation. So finger of one hand will place inside the cheek region and the finger of other hand will place in the outside extraoral in the buccinator muscle area or in the cheek area. Then you start palpating both inside and outside. So this method of palpation we call it as bimanual palpation. So examination of lateral pterygoid muscle. So here we will place the index finger of one hand, ask the patient to slightly open the mouth, then palpate behind the maxillary tuberosity region, both medially and laterally, for the functional evaluation of the lateral pterygoid muscle. An examination of medial pterygoid. So for examining medial pterygoid, you start from the retromolar area inside the oral cavity. So ask the patient to open the mouth widely, then start palpating from the retromolar area. Then pass your finger downwards along the lingual side of the mandibular, molar and the premolar teeth region. So then is the fourth muscle of mastication, the temporalis muscle. So when you are palpating for temporalis also, you should ask the patient clench their teeth. Patient should be in the occlusion position. Then start palpating in the area just posterior to the lateral canthus of the outer canthus of the eye and in the temporal fascia area. So just above the ear and slightly in front of the ear you should palpate. So as all of you know that this temporalis muscle is a fan-shaped muscle which is located in the temporalis area. So you should palpate this entire region. So next is the palpation of sternocleidomastoid muscle. So when you are palpating the sternocleidomastoid muscle, ask the patient to turn to the opposite side. So when the patient turns to the opposite side, it will become prominent. Then you start palpating from upper end to the till the lower border. So this is the palpation of the trapezius muscle which is present on the posterior to the sternocleidomastoid muscles. With your 3 fingers we should do the distal palpation of the trapezius muscle. So whenever you are palpating these muscles, you should also record the patient response under these 4 categories. If there is no pain and palpation, you put under 0. If the patient responds that palpation is uncomfortable, so put it 1. recorded if patient experience definite discomfort or pain, put it under. If the patient is having severe pain with eye tearing, so then you put under the category of 3. So this, though I have just told about the exam, once you will come to the clinic, so we'll show by palpating also. Okay. So next is the examination of the temporomandibular joint. So for joint, you should evaluate pain, dysfunction, sounds and the restrictions. So this is how the diagram showing from the lateral side how we will examining for the TMJ. Okay. So for sounds, you should first evaluate the clicking sound. So whenever found that clicking sound is present, so you should note down whether the clicking is present only while opening the mouth or during closing the mouth or both. Then the other sound like crepitation, which is nothing but multiple rough gravel-like sounds, often described as grating sound. So these sounds are usually perceived by placing the fingertip over the lateral surface of the joint and asking the patient to open and close the mouth. And in the joint restriction, so as I already mentioned, you should mention the interincisal distance, then the lateral and protrusive movements of the mouth, then the end fill and the deviations, whether it's deviate to right side or left side or any deflections. So these things you should record in the joint sounds and the joint restrictions. So this completes the functional aspects of the TMJ. Coming to the temporomandibular joint disorders or the applied aspects of TMJ. Temporomandibular joint disorders, which is a collective term embracing a number of clinical problems which involve either TMJ or masticatory musculature or associated structure, or both it can involve. Means the pain may be occur only in the joint also in few patients, or it can also occur only in the muscular pain, or sometimes both can coexist in one patient. So these TMJ disorders are mainly characterized by facial pain in the TMJ area, that is in the pretragus area or in the muscles of mastication, any limitation or deviation in the mandibular movements, and any sounds produced during jaw movement and the functions. So coming to the classification of joint disorders, so this was given by American Academy of Orofacial Pain on temporomandibular joint. So first is the congenital or developmental disorder, which include aplasia and hypoplasia and hyperplasia. Disc derangement disorders, that is disc displacement with reduction and without reduction. Joint dislocation, inflammatory condition like capsulitis and polyarthritis. Non-inflammatory conditions like osteoarthritis, it can be primary or secondary. Next is the ankylosis, which is either bony ankylosis or fibrous ankylosis. Any fractures in the condyle or coronoid. And structural incompatibility of articular surfaces, that is deviation in form, either in the deviation may be due in the disc, condyle or in the fossa. Any adhesions can occur between the disc to condyle or disc to fossa. Then the subluxation, spontaneous, and then is the dislocation. So this is the classification of the temporomandibular joint disorders. So this is one more classification. So try to learn this classification. It is very simple and it's a standard. It's taken from the book OKC. Okay. So these are two more classification, but mainly learn the first classification, that is more important. So we'll start with the developmental disturbances of the temporomandibular joint. So the first is condylar hyperplasia. So I think all of you know the meaning of hyperplasia, that is increase in the size of a tissue due to increase in the number of cells. Okay, this is called as hyperplasia. So it's a developmental disturbance of TMJ which affect the size and shape of the condyle. The main etiology for condylar either can be trauma or infection which causes disturbance in the condylar growth. The True condylar hyperplasia usually occurs after puberty and it is completed by 18 to 25 years of age. So as we see in this picture, so coming to the clinical features, it's more common in females, occurs before the onset of age, so, it's common in males, and it occurs before the age of 20 years, and it's a self-limiting, means it progresses till the patient's growth. Once the patient growth is stopped, so the growing of this condyle is also automatically will stop. So the mainly it is characterized by the facial asymmetry. So as we see in this female patient, the right side there is a less growth and the right left side it is growth is more. So which the chin always deviates towards the unaffected side. So this is the diagram which is taken by 3D CT imaging. So you can see on the left side the growth is more, on the right side the growth is very less. So you can easily diagnose whenever you are checking for the facial asymmetry during taking a case history. So in this patient there will be increase in vertical dimensions of ramus, mandibular body or the alveolar process on the affected side. There will be posterior open bite on the affected side, and the TMJ dysfunction, that is it can be limitation in the mouth opening or there will be deviation of the mandible towards the affected side. Coming to the radiographic features of condylar hyperplasia, condyle may appear relatively normal but symmetrically enlarged. It's altered in shape, like it can be conical, spherical, elongated or irregular in outline. Elongation of the condylar head and neck with compensating forward bend forming an inverted L shape. The cortical thickness and the trabecular pattern is usually normal. The ramus and the mandibular body on the affected side will be enlarged. So as we see in this OPG, so on the right side it is enlarged, on the left side it is normal in size. So that means in this patient there is a condylar hyperplasia on the right side. So these are the few more radiographic pictures showing the condylar hyperplasia on the left side of the joint. So the treatment for this condylar hyperplasia is orthodontic treatment with orthognathic surgery once the growth of the condyle is stopped. Next is the condylar hypoplasia. It's a failure of the condyle to attain normal size. Either it can be because of congenital disturbances or any developmental abnormalities, or during any acquired diseases that affect the condylar growth. The condyle is usually smaller in size, but the morphology will be normal. The congenital abnormalities which are underdeveloped ramus and mandibular body, and this condition may be unilateral or bilateral. So it is usually generalized in few syndromes like Treacher's-Collins syndrome. The acquired abnormalities, damage during growth period from therapeutic radiation or infection that diminishes further condylar growth and development. Clinical features are, here also you will see the asymmetry. Chin is deviated to the affected side, mandible deviated to the affected side during the mandibular opening. So if it is long term, then it will lead to degenerative joint disorder. So whatever the clinical features I told for hyperplasia, it will be opposite for the hypoplasia. So radiographically, the condyle will be normal in shape and structure, but the size will be less. Mandibular fossa will be small. Condylar neck and coronoid process are very slender, and in some cases it appears shortened and elongated. So since there is asymmetry in the growth of the jaw, so definitely there will be crowding and the antagonial notch will be deepened. So this is a 3D imaging showing the condylar hypoplasia on the left side of the face. So this is the OPG showing the hypoplasia on the right side. So the treatment for condylar hypoplasia is orthognathic surgery, bone grafts and orthodontic therapy. So this completes the developmental disturbances. The rest we'll discuss in the next whatever the rest disorders related to the TMJ. Since there is a less time, it's 3 minutes left for the meeting. So we'll stop here and we'll continue in the next Friday lecture. And if anybody is having any doubts, you can ask now. You can unmute yourself and you can ask.